Before we get into the podcast, I just want to let you know that my free meditation course is available to download below. So click below if you'd like to download my free meditation course. And this meditation course will help you develop your meditation skills so that you can calm your anxious thoughts, release your tensions, and relieve your daily stresses from just 5 minutes of practice a day. So if you want to get started on your meditation journey, then click below and download my free meditation course now. If you'd like to work with me personally to help manifest your dream life, then click below and purchase my Dream Life Manifestation course. And in this course, you'll work with me over 12 weeks to develop your mindset and business skills so that you can start the journey to your dream life. So don't hesitate to claim this offer. Click below and purchase my Dream Life Manifestation course now. Hello and welcome back to Deep Topics with Shaun. I'm your host, Shaun, and this is episode 8 of the podcast. And it's a huge milestone to have got to this point, starting off at episode 1 and still finding my feet way back then. I'm getting into the flow of things and starting to understand more strongly what are the types of topics that resonate with my audience, and also what are the types of topics that are meaningful and fulfilling for me to speak about. And you might notice also a scene change. I'm also exploring new compositions in my apartment, and I'm really enjoying the sunlight, the glow that I'm receiving from this specific view. So I also hope that you enjoy it if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, maybe you can also see this because I would have uploaded the video. And on either platform, please leave a like and leave a comment or a review letting me know what you think about the podcast, and leave a comment or review letting me know whether you agree with anything that I've shared in this episode or disagree, or maybe you want to share your personal perspective and we can start a conversation down below. Make sure to also subscribe, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify. Subscribe to Deep Topics with Shaun to receive more notifications for upcoming episodes. And I really hope that you enjoy episode 8, which in this episode, I'm going to talk about scapegoating in my family structure. Okay, so this story starts. I don't even know where it starts, but I'm just going to tell you about the background firstly. Based on whether you've heard my stories from previous episodes, you might know that I grew up in a very chaotic and volatile household. And from my earliest memories, I was a very much angry child. I remember getting in trouble a lot for swearing at various family members and calling them things like bitch and fuck. And I remember knowing the pain of the words, and I remember knowing how it resonated with certain family members. But at the time, it appeared that that act was actually an act of rebellion in the face of excessive control that I was seeing from my various family members. So when I say excessive control, I mean things like there were way too many rules about what not to do. So, for instance, don't go outside, don't play with the neighborhood kids, don't do this, don't run here, don't enter there, don't do that, or you're doing this wrong, or there's something wrong with you, or why are you like that, or you're such a naughty child. So, from my very earliest memories of my upbringing, I was always characterized as a problem. I was characterized as a problem, and my humanness, my innate childlike expression, was never really welcomed or accepted by my family. It was always made out to be something that was challenging for them to deal with. In addition to that, I mentioned in previous episodes that having grown up, the narrative that was told to me by my family members was that my dad abandoned me. And the other narrative was that at the hospital, there was a woman who asked my mom about whether the child was available for adoption, and that my grandmother convinced my mom to not put me up for adoption and to actually take care of me. And my grandmother promised my mom that she would help raise me. And so the narrative of my growing up was that nobody wanted you, and we actually had to be convinced to keep you. And I think that also growing up, I kind of felt that from the interactions of various family members, particularly my mom, who was under great financial pressure, often interacting with me in a way to show me that I was an annoyance to her. And my mere presence or my existence was a problem for her. And I remember that she was a very closed off person who wasn't very nurturing and warm. But what I remember from that time was that that made me grow cold and distant and kind of also indifferent to her presence. Whereas one would cry out for their mom's attention, I very early on knew that my mom did not want to give me any attention. And I remember feeling um, very much blank towards her presence. I felt a challenge understanding why my mom was not showing me love. And this became more evident to me growing up, where I started to see that there was a hot and cold dynamic that my mom was playing with me. And this hot and cold dynamic was that there would be times when she would beat me so hard that it was as if I was a punching bag and an outlet for this woman's fury. I was not a child at that point. I was not a human. I was the beating point for this woman's frustration and anger. And at that point, I did not know that a parent can have self control, because this woman clearly did not have self control. And she also did not have self control in her financial spending, because, as we've seen over the past few episodes, that we were in very much financial distress due to her poor impulse control and excessive spending, and also taking on massive amounts of financial debt. So it also turns out that in my family, poor impulse control was a dominant theme, and narcissism and abuse was also a dominant theme. There, not only was my mom beaten by her romantic partner, but so too was my aunt beaten by her romantic partner. So too was my grandmother beaten by her romantic partner. So too was my great grandmother beaten by her romantic partner. And so in my family, there was a dominant theme of that your loved ones will abuse you, and that will be love. And they will not apologize, and they will not show any remorse for that. They just try to beat the shit out of you, that they will come back with, um, uh, you brought it upon yourself, or look what you made me do, or how could you do that? How could you do that? Or you deserved that, or I did it out of love for you. And so there was this very much fucked up narrative of that. As you grow up in this family, that you will be abused by your loved ones, and that will be love. So, in that chaotic and volatile household that I grew up in, it was my great grandmother's household. And I remember telling you previously that in a moment of anger, my grandmother hit my great grandmother with a hairbrush. And my great grandmother was around 70 years old, and my grandmother was, I don't know, maybe 50 or something. So, it was such a traumatic incident for my great grandmother that she immediately kicked out my grandmother and changed the name of the home, the owner of the home, to my grandfather instead. That was the source of the separation. From that point onwards, my great grandmother looked at both my grandmother and my mom and me as people who were not so much family anymore, but who were out to get her. So I, in addition to my mom, were just guilty by association. And my great grandmother was very much fearful and distrusting of everybody at that time. So I witnessed that moment. I witnessed that moment when my grandmother hit my great grandmother with a hairbrush on the head, and in a moment of anger, I remember I was impatient about the Coke that they had just purchased, and I wanted it to be open. And something triggered my grandmother to be so angry that she both poured that Coke down the drain and also hit her mom on the head with a hairbrush. And that act of violence was never spoken about openly in my family. It was brushed over, and when my great grandmother was about to die, there was a reconciliation between her and her daughter, and that reconciliation involved an apology. And I don't really believe that either of those parties recognized the magnitude of what had happened, because abusing each other in that family was so normal that it was just it was seen as just one of those things that happened. There are also many memories that I have of where I was already being beaten by my mom and my grandmother, but while I was crying and saying no more, they would go in and they would beat and beat until you can't cry anymore. So they saw my expression of myself and my emotion and my grief as an annoyance to them. My grief was an annoyance to my family members. My healthy emotions were an inconvenience to my family members, and they sought to beat the shit out of me so that I was cold and didn't feel anything at all. And my survival in that family from that point onwards, from 6 years onwards, was about not showing any emotions, was about hiding who I really was about not telling anybody about how I felt, not telling the teachers about the chaotic and volatile household that I was growing up in, not telling the teachers and the community that I'm in an abusive, fucked up family. And uh, on the outside, everybody having this view that my mom was this like so hardworking and does her best to put food on the table, but meanwhile she's beating me. Meanwhile, my grandmother is hitting my great grandmother. Meanwhile, people are in marriages being abused by their loved ones. There are people in financial distress, and all I just have this urge to like offer remorse to my childhood self that you I'm so sorry you went through that. It's interesting for me to see that these women in the family were beaten by both their parents and their romantic partners and were told that it is discipline, and then they got themselves in relationships where their partners beat them, and it didn't click to them, wait, maybe I chose the abuser to love because that abusive love was modeled to me by my parents. And maybe I didn't turn out okay. Maybe I'm fucked in the head. And therefore, I'm going to do the same thing to my children to make them also fucked in the head. It's times like these where I go to therapy, you know, and have been introduced to therapy over the past 5 years to see that what the fuck happened what the fuck type of family did I grow up in? Where people pretend that everything is okay, but everything is not okay. It's just an artificial sense of calm based on ignoring the problems. And nobody talks about weird and fucked up things that are going on. Like, one of the most weird and fucked up things is that in my aunt's household, my aunt used to be very much angry and emotionally volatile. And because she was angry and emotionally volatile, there would be this thing of walking on eggshells around her. So you couldn't, I couldn't, and probably have to even be wary now of saying what I really think, even to the point you do not disagree with this person, because they might get so angry that they might shout at you, verbally assault you, or maybe even kick you out. And so my grandmother now has this very submissive demeanor where she is now kind of have become the child to the daughter. She has this submissive attitude of where she does not say what she thinks, and she does not say how she feels, and she's very much always aware of how her daughter will react to what she's saying, because the daughter showed herself to be very angry and emotionally volatile. And this is the same type of anger and emotional volatility that my mom showed when I was in my younger ages, where just being yourself is something for them to be angry about. That as a child, it felt like my only job there was to parent this parent, was to shut the fuck up, and was to be grateful for the food on the table. My pain, my grief, my sorrow was not acknowledged. My anger was seen as naughtiness. Naughtiness, there's something wrong with me for having anger. It was not acknowledged that when you grow up in an abusive family with narcissists and addicts, that that anger is justified. It is normal to feel anger when you're looking at your family members seeing that they're super fucked in the head. It makes you wonder, what am I doing here? And also, not only what am I doing here, there's nowhere for me to go. And so, how can I survive in this space? I must become a shell of myself. So, I was a shell of myself for a very long time. And being a shell of myself meant also going into high school and being characterized as shy. You know, all throughout my life, characterized as shy. He doesn't speak, he's so shy. No, it's not that I was shy, it's that I was being beaten by my family members, and they did not want to hear anything from me, including what I thought or how I felt. I was not shy, I was just beaten like an animal. I was beaten like an animal, and I was told that it was out of love. Just like my parents and their parents and their parents, the thing of like hitting so hard and so continuously that the person grows numb. They loved that type of abuse. And the way that they absolve themselves from guilt is to tell themselves that it wasn't abuse, to tell themselves that it was discipline, and to also characterize the person who's being abused as something defective or something wrong or something bad, so that they could feel righteous and justified in their abusive tendencies. So, over the past 5 years, I've started to recognize what it means to be both a scapegoat and a golden child at the same time. And I kind of have oscillated between the two, because when I read the definitions of the golden child, it appears that the golden child is someone that can do no wrong. And when I think about my family members, I think that my mother's brother's adoptive son might have been that golden child. What happened was that my mother's brother married a woman who already had a son, and they continue to highlight the son as this pure and perfect entity who could do no wrong. And he was always high contrasted to me. I was always compared to him in terms of, oh, look at this boy who pays his own school fees, and look at him getting a job, and look at him walking from school, and you need your great grandmother to pick you up from school, and you not working. And I was just compared and compared and compared to this person who really was not really perfect. I could see that the my mother's brother's wife was so insecure about her place in the family, and was so insecure about having a son being accepted into the family, that she projected that whole thing onto me in an attempt to rather solidify her son's status in the family by making me feel unstable and uncertain and insecure. And it worked. I was insecure for a very long time. On the other hand, my mother's sister's children, very early on, were somehow taught to feel like they are superior to me in some ways. And I remember the ways that they used to interact with me growing up. It was very much a love hate relationship where they used to consider it fighting. But really, if I wanted to do something, they would be turned off from it. If I wanted to go somewhere, they would not want to go to that same place. If I wanted to come along, I was seen as someone who, was like dirty and disgusting and don't want to be around. So, all of my mother's siblings were teaching their children to see me as the poor one, the poor one. I was seen as the poor one from the farm. I was seen as the poor one from the farm, not only by my mother's siblings' children, but by my mother's siblings, and by my mother, and also by her mother, and by all the family members. I was seen as a poor one from the farm. And not only that, I was seen as the one with curly hair cruised like steel wool. That's what they told me. Curly hair cruised like steel wool, dark skin, not fair, um, too thin, wearing old clothes. So they really had an exhaustive list of all of the things that were wrong and defective about me. And they, over many, many years, made me feel like my existence was wrong. I was a bad person. I was a naughty person. I was a wrong person. And compared to them and their kids and their family members, that I was dirty, disgusting, stupid. And I think honestly that academic excellence in school was a way for me to put a smile on my mom's face, a temporary smile, and to also show that, look, I'm worth something, but they never acknowledged it. They never acknowledged it. Still, my mom's sister's kids were told by their family members from the dad's side that the school that Shaun goes to has a lower level of education, and that's why he's succeeding as well as he is. And that allowed them to feel good about their mediocre results. I was doing the academic excellence. I was getting A's here and there and everywhere, and I was getting praised by the teachers. And even in my final year, when all of the exams were the same, I remember the principal of the high school called mom's brother to tell him that I was receiving an award from the district, and that could he take me to Durban to receive that award. I remember sitting in the car, getting his wife was in the front seat. I remember sitting in the car, and she made a comment about how anybody could have done that. I remember being so angry in that instance that I said, in the family, the training was you don't talk about how you feel. But I remember I could not leave it in that moment. You're not going to say that. I worked hard for this. And I remember that even in that moment of my greatest accomplishments, they attempted to diminish my accomplishments to make me feel smaller so that I could match their small image of me. Even now, as I continue to thrive and flourish in my life, I've lived in Joburg because I wanted to. I wanted to have that experience. I lived in Durban because I wanted to. I wanted to have that experience. I lived in Cape Town and I still do now because I wanted to. I wanted to have that experience. I was recruited by top companies. I worked for Unilever as an assistant brand manager. I worked as a client associate for Brighton Capital. I worked as a business intelligence analyst for Hyperion Dev. I just get opportunities here, there, and everywhere. And I continue to show myself what I'm truly capable of. Like only recently, I was like facing a bit of imposter syndrome. Remember, because the fucked up family training of attempting to diminish me into something that I'm not. It needed me to write a list let me write a list of things that I'm grateful for over the past 5 years. And I wrote this list. And I want to read some of that list. I want to read some of that list. I'm going to read some of that list. Completed 2 years of art school. Like, not only did I get into the top South African university and graduated with a finance degree, but I got in again to study art. And I completed successfully 2 years of art school. I discovered my drawing skill and I refined that skill to an adept level. I built an online business in a meaningful and fulfilling area. I built a business in 8 months. Remember the story I keep telling about sleeping on my aunt's floor? The story I don't tell is that I was suffering from internal bleeding in my lower intestine for the whole time that I was living there. And every time I go there, every time I've gone there in the past, there's always been some type of health condition that I only face for the time that I'm living there. What's going on? It's like my body now is trying to align with their view of me. Problem, sick, suffering, bad, defective. What does it mean then about my ability to engage with these people? There are even subtle ways in which they bully me and ignore me. And it's made like my grandmother always says this thing, they don't like you. And for a long time, I always thought to myself, you know, she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. She's just crazy. But actually, I think that they have been trained to see me as inferior to them, that even when I do great and wonderful things in the world, that their view of me is still inferior. Let me read more of this list. Bought my mom a washing machine, lived in premium Mhlanga suburb of Durban, lived in premium Midrand suburb of Johannesburg, in my own apartment, lived in my dream suburb of Claremont, Cape Town, which I'm still living in right now, discovered psychedelic healing and consciousness expansion insights, saved 40,000 Rand of savings in 8 months, lived in the premium suburb of Sunningdale, Cape Town. And so, there's so many things that I continue to do for myself. And one thing that I've been struggling with recently was this idea of like, well, all the goals that I had for myself over the past 15 years, I appear to have achieved many of them. And I've built such a wonderful toolkit, a skill set of these great and wonderful things. Like I mentioned, I worked as an assistant brand manager. So not only do I have marketing experience, I have project management experience, I have team leadership experience. I have, mm, I worked as a client associate. I have sales experience. I have analysis experience. I have risk mitigation experience. I have proposal writing experience, report writing experience. I went to the top South African university. I did economics. I learned economics. I learned statistics. I learned accounting. My my life, I'm like one. I have become one of the most wholesome, skilled, insightful people that you will ever come across in your entire life. And for a very long time, it was hidden to me by myself from that view that that was implanted in my mind of diminishing my own self to to make others feel, to not trigger their insecurities. That makes me think that the message to me was that being yourself will make other people insecure about themselves. I need to wake up from that. Wake up, Shaun. Wake up. The world does not need me to be a shell of myself. And every time I think about going to see my family, I see the psychic image of myself going like that, going like that, like going like that. I see the psychic image of myself going like that. Why is it going like that? Because for it to have survived around them required it to like could constrict itself, to constrain itself, to hide itself. And that creates confusion and ambivalence. I do not know how to navigate this because I I might have to go there in a few weeks. How do I navigate being around people who they themselves don't know that they're doing this? Imagine telling people that are not woke that, hey, look, you're playing dysfunctional family roles. Remember, one thing about how this works in a dysfunctional family is that they don't acknowledge their shortfalls. So the narcissistic individual who's wrathful and furious, when you tell them to reflect on that, they become more wrathful and furious. When I tell my grandmother, why are you always critical? Then the response is, why are you fighting with me? So they do not have the capacity to self reflect and to also see that they are playing these family roles that are very much dysfunctional. I often think about, there are times when one of my cousins come down from Pretoria, and um, my aunt, my cousin, his sister, their little brother, and the dad will arrange trips but will not ask me if I want to go along. It's as if I'm invisible to them. I remember once they were going hiking with their connected family, and I asked, could I come along? And the response to me was, no, it's already booked. So this is not the first time. When I used to do exceptionally well in school, remember, and I used to go with my cousins to their grandmother's house where their aunt and would buy them like these toys and would give them money for good results. But of all of the cousins, which Sometimes they consider me a cousin and sometimes they don't. Of all of the cousins, I was doing the best academically. I was leagues ahead of everyone. And to not receive those gifts made me wonder if there's something wrong with me. Like, what's wrong with me? And I remember when in my second year of university, I asked this woman also via email for some help with financing my university, and she said no. She said she didn't have the money. I remember being so furious that the whole decade's worth of anger came out, and I degraded her for her infertility. After that, before her mom died, her mom came to me and gave me like 800 rand. So that was the moment for those people to feel remorse for having ignored me all that time. What does it mean also when your family members ignore you? It's not only me that they do that to. They do that to my grandmother and they do that to my mom. So it looks like I am just the intergenerational dumping ground for that role. I became that scapegoat, but my mom was that before me, and my grandmother was that before her. And even now, I wonder if either of them realized that, or my grandmother doesn't have the capacity to understand what that means. But my mom, I think she will. And I definitely do. So that is a very challenging space to be in because it creates this internal conflict of do you see them again or do you not see them again? And this came up recently because this is the year of my grandmother's 80th birthday, and my aunt is having a birthday party for her. And that birthday party, it's I'm not going to be there because my mom's brother, who kicked me out of my childhood home, is going to be there. And I've chosen to do no contact indefinitely for my mental and emotional health. My life is better now than it's ever been, and that's how I like it. But my aunt, when she heard that I'm not going to be there, she says to me that she wanted me to do a speech there as the favorite grandchild who's also dumped on emotionally by everyone, who's also bullied and ignored by all of the people, who also is invalidated and made to feel smaller by all of the family members. I'm the favorite grandchild. What really does that mean? What is the significance of it? You know, my gift to my grandmother is the weeks and months of time that I've continued to spend with her year after year. And I don't think a speech at a birthday celebration is really a gift significant enough to match the amount of time that I've given her. Even knowing all of the abusive things that she says to me, that it continues to be a thing about me forgiving, and it continues to be a thing about others not opening their eyes to their abusive tendencies. And so we are locked in the cycle of they abuse, I forgive. And you know what? I'm fucking done with it. I'm done with the mother's brother who can go fuck himself. And he's already in a dysfunctional relationship with his wife where she mentally and emotionally degrades him. So that's already an ongoing abusive relationship. I don't think it's confronted. I don't think it's confronted. I think they're stuck in some type of dream. And then my aunt now has a partner who doesn't abuse her. So that's great. She snapped out of that one. My mom never dated again, or did, I don't know, and found the same problems she always did. And my grandmother left her marriage but still longs for the abuser. I was in one healthy relationship but did not know how to deal with it. So it was, I was very much volatile. And then every relationship after that was abusive, mentally and emotionally, not physically, gladly. But I thought that was normal. Even the last relationship that I was in, I was manipulated and guilt tripped into having sex with my partner. I felt an obligation to give my body when I didn't want to. There were times when I was not spoken to for days, and I was made to feel insecure and uncertain about my place. And when I think about it, working in Unilever with that bitch of a manager treated me the same way. She was very much angry and wrathful behind closed doors. I mentioned this previously. But she was covertly and narcissistic. She had this shell of goodness and purity on the outside, but internally she was a super bitch. And even that other one from Joburg, that man was wrathful and furious all the time. And then in Hyperion Dev, this woman was manipulative left, right, and center, and so was everybody else. You think the HR listen to your problems? No, they're also manipulative. And they took this like holier than thou. Oh, we're doing our job. We're just doing our job. We're doing our job well. No, you're fucking manipulating people and you're hurting people. So I'm glad to have left that shit show. But it makes me wonder now, when will you know what the saving grace is? I met Shaun Abrahams in 2015, and Shaun Abrahams sees me for like a real human. And that, I think, that's a game changer for me. It's a game changer because I met Lindy last year, and Lindy is like Shaun Abrahams. They're like super woke and aware, and they see me as a real human. So now I'm starting to see that even though I worked in these super fucked up spaces with stupid fucked up people, that throughout time I have infrequently but significantly met very, very impactful and insightful people who reflect to me who I really am, and not the shell of a self that was attempted to be conditioned to me by stupid family roles. So it gives me great hope to continue on to the journey of seeking what they call the spiritual family. The spiritual family. Don't give a fuck about blood. Blood is an excuse for abuse. I'm not into that, sorry. No family member must be abusing me anymore. And I'm prepared to confront it. And I think that's also a great and wonderful thing, to have the courage to confront it. And to just not give a fuck, because I have the confidence of me showing myself what is capable by my efforts and by my actions. And that it makes me think about the repeated efforts of my mother's brother to diminish and disintegrate my view of myself. I remember when I was going to university, my grandmother was like, we were poor of wealth, and my grandmother was like asking people that she knew for any type of financial support. And my mother's brother took it as an attack on his image and said to her to stop. So they think that they have a positive view, that they think that people have a positive view of them. But that is only a facade. And from what I've seen in this episode, that people in my family believe that the external view of them is positive. It's a facade. We're seeing now with my mom's sister's ex-husband's son that he is actively crafting a dual identity where to the external world he is pure and perfect, and within the household he is seen as not. So that splitting of the self is very tragic to see in a generation after mine, because one would expect actually that my generation is the one to heal from it. But I wonder if my cousins are actively confronting the family roles like I have, because I continue to see ways in which I have been treated like an outcast. I've been treated like the poor farm child. But I really know for myself what great and wonderful things that I have done, and I know what great and wonderful things I'll continue to do. And I guess this is a turning point for me to really also like shed that old identity. Shed the old identity that never served me but was functional for survival at some point and is no longer functional anymore, is now inhibiting. It is very much inhibiting. I hope that what I've shared throughout this episode can help you. If you've been in a dysfunctional family with narcissists, abusers, and addicts like I have, where either you were sometimes praised, most times shamed and rejected, you felt like you had to prove to your family that you're worthy of love just by out of your actions, not by existing but by doing things. Tell me about it. Post it down below and let's talk about that, because I was watching a lot of videos lately about scapegoating, and one thing that I've seen in the comments is that many people are describing themselves as both the scapegoat and the golden child. So it seems like that sometimes the family are they don't know whether to love or hate, or is it beneficial for them, or it's about usefulness and beneficial. When it's useful for them to be aligned with the joys, successes, and achievements, they will be. When it's useful for them to be aligned with the scapegoating, with somebody to mentally and emotionally dump on, they will be. But I guess the healing comes from not but from knowing that that false identity was actually a mass deception internally and externally, and to no longer identify with that, which I'm still learning how to do that. I'm still learning how it goes, and I'm reading a book recently rejected, shamed, and blamed. I'm reading a book. And it's 88 pages. I'm like 60 pages through. I read it, I like slept late last night because I was just so into that book. It was just like feeding my soul. But I'm glad to have discovered this. I'm glad to be conscious and aware of what's happening. And I'm glad to continuously become conscious and aware of what's happening so that, there's this quote where it says your subconscious might rule your life and you'll call it fate. So it does hit home this idea of making it conscious, bringing things to the surface so that you can see it clearly, see it for what it is, and then heal from it, let go from it, shed the old identity, shed and continuously shed those layers that no longer served you, that never served you. And I'm going to continue to add to my list of gratitudes because something that I think I also need to emphasize to myself is that I'm healthy, whole, and functioning as I am. My job in physical reality is merely to exist. Everything else is a cherry on top. I don't have to do anything. I can do things for my life, but me doing is not contributing to my worthiness. My worthiness is purely a function of life and existence. I do not need to deserve it. I did not need to deserve it. I did not need to deserve worthiness, and you don't need to deserve worthiness. Worthiness is not something about deserving. It's just there. It's just there. It's a function of life. Yeah, I want to continue talking about this next week, and I have 3 more episodes left in this apartment, I think. Let's see how that goes. But I just want to summarize what I've spoken about so far so that I can also like gather my thoughts in this moment. I grew up in a chaotic and volatile household in which my family members beat and abused me and called it love and discipline. And they too were beaten and abused by their family members who also called it love and discipline. And it was so fucked up that the women in my family all chose abuser partners who would then beat and abuse them because their parents showed them that that is what love was. Interestingly enough, none of them had healthy relationships, and none of them knew what a healthy relationship was. And neither of them still know what a healthy relationship is, except my mom's sister, who now appears to be in a healthy relationship with her third partner. So it took 3 tries to get it right for her. For my mom, I don't know how many tries, or maybe she stopped trying. My grandmother stopped trying, and my great grandmother stopped trying. So they never chose a romantic partner or had a successful, healthy relationship. I was a very angry, volatile child. I remember hitting my family members as I was 6 years old, swearing at them, bitch, fuck, all of these things, fuck you, you stupid bitch, all of these things. And I was doing that out of anger because there was uh, too much attempt to control my interactions, trying to control which way I move, how fast I run, where do I walk, who do I talk to, what do I see. Too much attempted control. Don't go out of the house. Don't talk to these people. Mm, don't go outside. You're going to get kidnapped. All of this fucked up bullshit stuff. And then to the teachers and to school, I was doing academic achievement. I remember my mom was so hating of me. I think she actually did hate me for some time. I think she hated me and might also have trained herself to love me. hated me, saw me as an inconvenience, as a problem, naughty, bad, and so did her siblings, and so did her mother, and so did the siblings' children. And so all of the family members conditioned themselves to look down upon me. So, me in school doing the academic achievement, and I remember feeling that at school I felt alive in a way that I didn't at home. S- uh, the way the teachers saw me as good, and that brought the necessary balance that I needed to avoid complete self-destruction. They also spoke about suicide in the family, and they spoke about mental illness. They spoke about suicide and mental illness, and they also have seen me face the challenges with depression and so forth, but they have characterized me personally as having something wrong, defective, or ill. But as I continue to work through these things, I start to see that I'm not wrong, defective, or ill. I'm actually the one confronting it, making it conscious, dealing with it, and healing with it, healing from it. And so it has almost inhibited my life in certain ways. I'm going to tell you how. Choosing friends that ignore me, choosing friends that make me feel less than, choosing friends that are inconsiderate is one way. Choosing friends that like me when I have something that is valuable to them, don't like me when I don't have something that is valuable to them, which is the same thing that my mother's brother does with his wife. They have this very prideful thing where they're so much concerned with their outward appearance that they will shift their views and alliances to maintain an outward good view of them, which honestly I don't think anybody has that view of them. I think it's a false um, I think it's a false reality that they're living in, to avoid confronting that they're actually weird and fucked up people. And when you look at the amount of like destroyed relationships, you can actually see that the fruits of the actions are showing who they really are. In my working career, I've also met three. I worked in three full-time organizations, and all three of those full-time organizations, I faced the same type of narcissistic, wrathful, manipulative personalities. And it makes me wonder, like, I surely know that work is not like that, because remember, I met Shaun Abrams and I met Lindy. So I know that in the world there are good, whole, healthy, functioning people. But that I've went into those organizations not knowing or being able to see up front those things makes me wonder how to be aware of it going forward, because I'd rather not be stuck in any type of unhealthy cycle. So I want to be able to see the red flags before I go into them. And not I want to be able to see the red flag not before I go into them, so that I never go into them, and that I choose the green flags. And the green flags are the healthy, whole green flags. I choose the green flags because I love myself and I know I deserve the best for myself. There have been times in my life where not I've compromised on things that are valuable, and I wonder if it has come from the subconscious perspective of believing myself to be less than. Like at times I've slept on the floor and avoided buying a mattress. I wonder if it's because I just believed myself to be deserving of the floor. But I don't anymore. And I continue to become more aware of what I want in my life and who I am and what do I really feel like I deserve for myself. And it has been a long journey, but it has really been helpful to have the first thing, a person who sees you for who you are and not for your false self. A person who reflects positive characteristics to you. Maybe that's why I like Sean Abraham so much, because not only does he reflect to me who I really am, but I think I'm kind of like him. And I like him so much because I'm like, I'm seeing characteristics that I have in myself and I'm starting to like myself more. I know that, there are times in my family where they criticize me, but then I actually don't feel criticized because I like that thing about me and it throws them off. Like my aunt attempted to talk about how I'm not eating enough, I'm thin, but I'm not really thin, I'm lean. And my food intake is normal. And I love my body. And that threw her off. She didn't know what to say. When I talk about my successes to family members, they don't know what to say. They have a blank expression. They want to change the subject. They don't want to talk about me having good, great, wonderful things going on in my life. They don't know how to deal with it. It makes them feel insecure about themselves. When I face problems or challenges with my life, they're there, they're present for it, they're enthusiastic. They're enthusiastic when I'm challenged, when I'm suffering, when I'm in pain. And that I don't think they know that, I don't think they see it. I got myself into relationship. The first relationship I was in was a very healthy relationship. Blessing, if you're listening to that, blessing was a really healthy relationship. I didn't know how to deal with that. And I remember, very much fighting a lot. Angry, volatile, demanding, just didn't know how to deal with it. And then Blessing left. Blessing left. And he went to follow his dreams, but what a rejection for me. And then I never dated a healthy, whole, functioning person ever again. And I think he was that. And then when I saw Blessing again, he was giving off too much desperate vibes. And I was also depressed and suicidal. So that was not a good combination. So there could not be a reunion then. Every partner I dated after that was not available for me and maybe also even hated me. I never felt true love. I don't even know what love feels like. I know a little bit of what love feels like from the glimpse of my first relationship, but I don't even know. I think I know what it's like to love myself. I don't know what it's like to be loved by others. Many of my friends have just been selfish. I've chosen selfish friends. I've chosen selfish partners. People that ignore me, make me an outcast, bully me. And I know that I'm a strong and capable person. So I'm not seeking all of this abusive tendencies. And right now, as I have the courage to stand up for myself, as I continue to develop the courage to stand up for myself, I'm glad. But the one thing that I continue to think about, and I think maybe I should leave it at this point and continue in another episode. But the one thing I continue to think about is that all of the challenges from this lifetime are but a fraction of the challenges in relation to every lifetime. And maybe it is my job here as the woke one to become aware and to heal. You're healing the lineage, you're healing the ancestry, to feel, the first person in the family to feel. What happens then when I've exhausted the challenges of this lifetime and are starting to confront the challenges of other lifetimes? I learned recently that the body will have the capacity to hold it. So I must be prepared for that when it comes. And from some psychedelic incidents, from some psychedelic moments, I know a little bit of the approach of how to handle the intensity of that, to feel it in its entirety. It dissipates as you give it presence. It needs your presence. But when it comes to the scapegoat narrative, I'm done. I'm done with the scapegoat narrative. I'm nobody's problem. I'm actually a blessing and a joy. And I continue to see that with my impact on others. I'm a blessing and a joy, and I really positively and significantly impact the lives of others. And for that, I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful for Shaun Abrams. I don't know if you'll ever watch this, but I'm grateful. Again, yeah, I wanna thank you for listening to this podcast. I don't know if I concluded. I don't know what the takeaways are, but I know I reflected a lot, and I think that was important. Click below to download my free meditation course. This is the very same meditation that I use on a regular basis to calm anxious thoughts, release tensions, and relieve daily stresses. So if you want to get started on your meditation journey, then click below and download my free meditation course now. And if you want to work with me to manifest your dream life, then also there's a link down below. Click and purchase my dream life manifestation course, and you'll work with me over 12 weeks to build 6 streams of digital income, as well as to develop a dream life manifestation mindset so that you can start the journey to your dream life. So if you want to start the journey to your dream life, then click below and purchase my dream life manifestation course now. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you again. This is episode 8. Episode 8, and we talked about scapegoating and dysfunctional families and narcissistic, abusive, and addictions, and I haven't even touched some of the sorrowful things that have happened to me as a result of the impact of that scapegoat. You only talked about abusive relationships, workplace, romantic relationships, and so on. But I want to hear, I want to hear from you your experience as well. So let me know down below. Type your comment, leave me a comment, put a review on this podcast, leave a like, give me some stars, depending on the platform that you're listening or watching this to on. And if you want to see more, please subscribe to Deep Topics with Shaun on YouTube, and you'll receive notifications of upcoming episodes. And if you like to listen to this on Spotify, then please subscribe as well. And I would love to have you as a regular listener. And thank you again for listening to this episode 8 of Deep Topics with Shaun. And I'll see you again next week. I want to wish you a wonderful week. Thanks for listening. Goodbye. Take care. Bye, everyone.